This is Kent Kiess, and you're listening to Bad Deals.
Welcome to Bad Deals, the only real estate horror podcast on the air. I'm Jay Besega, your host, bringing you war stories from the top warriors in the real estate game today, all with crucial lessons in the end. Because in real estate, the worst deals often teach the most valuable lessons. Let's get started. Welcome to Bad Deals, the show where we know that real estate is not all sunshine and hockey stick growth. There are trials, challenges, and yes, sometimes bad deals. My name is Jay Besega, and my guest today is my friend and fellow Jake and Gino member, best-selling author, Mr. Kent Kiess. Kent, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, man. Can you say that one more time about the best author thing? I always want to keep hearing that.
Best-selling author Kent Kiess, and don't worry, folks, you will have the opportunity to know about the book, but you have to listen to the end. That's the trade-off.
There we go. That's the hook, right?
We're burying the lead here. That's awesome. Yeah, so Kent is a best-selling author, like we mentioned, and he buys and syndicates multifamily real estate with his passive investors to protect and grow their future. And Mr. Kent Kiess today is going to talk to us about trying to do everything in his family concrete business and the effect that had. So Kent, let's just jump right into it. I would love to know how you got a concrete business, what the lead up to this whole thing was. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Jay. It was when I was 10 years old. My dad ended up getting a concrete business. He actually worked for the company for a couple of years, and then they asked him, hey, would you be interested in buying it and taking it over? It was through another construction company, and so he did. And I was young at that time, and I thought it was great. It was awesome. Hey, my dad owns a concrete business. It's not the concrete truck that you usually see out there. It's not a ready mix truck. They call it a fresh mix truck, so it's got a different look to it. And so it was pretty cool. The company was called Concrete Mobile because the concrete was mobile. And you paid for what you used. Nowadays, or even back then, ready mix, if you ordered 3 yards, that's what you paid for. And we worked a lot with a lot of self-doers that poured their concrete. So we did that. And, probably when I was 10 years old, in the summertime, he'd come and wake me up and say, okay, son, let's go. We got to go to work. And at the time, I loved it. It was awesome. I got to ride in the back of the truck. My job, I knew what my job was when I got out. I had to grab the chutes and hook up the chutes, and dad would kind of check out everything and do his awesome stuff of trying to maneuver into places that were, I would have even thought anyone could get a truck in, and he did it, which was amazing. And so I had the job. I'd handle the chute, and it was great. I was working with 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old men, and I was just this little tight, getting things done. So I enjoyed it, had a great time, and then as the years went on, up and down valleys with owning your own business, it can hurt you, it can be a great thing. And it just became too much. They actually created a better concrete design for the concrete. And you don't see it, well, probably actually where you guys are at out here in Southern California, you don't see it, but you do see out in your area, where it's the front end loaders, they call them, and it's just so much easier. They can come in, one person can do the job. I kind of lost my job because I didn't have to do that shoot part anyway. So anyways, we end up at the point where Dad I was old enough. I was driving the truck when I was 16. So
wow, that's a lot of trust. A lot of trust for a 16-year-old.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a small town where I grew up, and but I did that, and then my dad, he had to go to work because we just wasn't making enough money.
Mm.
So he says, "Hey, are you comfortable about running this, doing this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do this, no problem." I did. I mean, I did a great job at it. I knew how to work hard. I, got up in the morning, did what I was supposed to, but I didn't understand the business side, and I
Mm.
was never taught the business side. I didn't. I don't. The one thing that got me to where I'm at today is someone told me, years ago that your money needs to make money for you. You don't work for your money. And that's, oh man, if you can write that down right now, that is going to get you so much farther and with less work. So, we end up having to sell the business, and I know it broke my heart, it broke my dad's heart because he had to work in a factory for the next 10, 15 years. I mean, he's fine. I mean, they're both great. Their health is fantastic. They love each other. It's great. They're doing what they wanted to do, but it's just at that time, those are the, it was a failure, and I didn't. It really crushed me because I felt that I was the oldest, and I didn't do what I was supposed to do for the
Mm-hmm.
family,
Mm.
So so that's where it was at with
Wow.
the business on that part of it.
Yeah. So you got this advice, don't work for your money, make your money work for you. Did you immediately apply that? Did you see the fruition immediately in your life of that when the business was sold?
No. I was very, what's the word? I guess you could say it to be nice. This is probably PG, but
Yeah, this is a
I,
family show, please.
I was very upset with the world.
Mm,
It wasn't fair. Why? We worked hard. Why don't we have what other rich people have? And we work harder than them.
yeah.
And I, at the time, I was an entrepreneur before up to all that because when I was a kid, I'd get on my bike and sell cards and shovel snow and mow yards and babysit and make all that money. But at that point, I'm like, I'm never doing that again. I'm working for a company where they can pay me and I'll just work for them. And I went in to become a mason and a concrete finisher for 10 years or so, and then still with that thought process and kind of I know everything and don't tell me that I don't know anything because I can do more than you.
Did you own that business, the masonry and concrete?
No, no, I would, that was the one thing that was in my mind. I wasn't going to own a business ever again because
Gotcha.
I saw what happened
Wow.
and, obviously it was probably some things that we could have done differently maybe, to keep that business going. Who knows? I mean, you don't know. Um, but it was just it was a mindset that,
Yeah.
that wasn't it was a failure, and the Kiesses don't fail.
Right. Right. Man, that's like that makes me think. I've wondered before if there's anybody on Earth who doesn't, at least somebody who's driven, that doesn't look back at their childhood with kind of like, I don't know, whatever the opposite of rose-colored glasses are. They're like, I'm never doing that again. Like, I'm never gonna make my kids do this. And I've done that. I'm sure you did that in this moment.
And that's it is. I mean, it's unfortunate for the next generation because
Mm,
you're already giving them what they should be thinking, and to me, and think that I found a beautiful, awesome woman
yeah.
that I got to marry, and she's a life coach herself, and which helps a lot. And it's just those are the things that, and she's from a whole different background, completely different. I mean, that's a whole other story in itself. Um, and it's just amazing the things that we've talked about and what we want to share with our kids. And when we finally got to that mindset which was we'll talk about here, I'm sure in a little bit
Yeah.
down the road. But I mean, yes, you're dead on. I mean, it's unfortunate that we do that to our kids because you not. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, But I'm just
Right.
saying, be careful what you say, because it goes on. You're passing that on, and
Mm,
sometimes there's things you don't want to pass. It's what I talked about, the generational traditions. One of mine was to grow the family, the company, and make the family grow and be successful. What am I gonna what are we gonna do?
yeah.
So I said to myself I was gonna work for somebody else and never have my own business. And so then I worked for them like 10 years, and I got to a point where this just isn't me. I need
Mm,
something else.
hmm.
And I got laid off, which I usually got laid off every winter because you can't lay brick and pour concrete in the wintertime in Ohio.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I end up loading up the truck, and I moved to Southern California, and my wonderful Aunt Linda took me in, and I had a construction job for 2 weeks, and they said, okay, we have to lay you off. So
Oh. Oh.
out in the middle of Southern California with nothing.
Wow. I mean, you had family to stay with, I guess, but I mean, probably
I
not for
did.
free.
Yeah, and it was. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
it was free. That was a blessing on that side of it.
Sure.
But that gets old too. But yeah, I mean, I had nothing. I mean, then I said to myself, I'm never doing anything in construction.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm never owning a business again. I'm never doing anything in construction again. What do you do at that
Because
point?
I failed.
Because
Because
you
I failed.
because you failed. That was, oh man. See, that's, I get the feeling that's going to be one of the big takeaways is like, and I've done this myself too. Just like, oh, I failed doing this. Well, that's too. I'm not. That ain't it. I'm good. And then just giving yourself less and less options.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like it's
That's
the
so
opposite
true.
of freedom.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So you moved to Southern California. You say, I'm never going to do construction again. Were you married at this point?
No, no, I
Okay.
wasn't married. I did the other reason I moved out to California was I wanted to get my education. I wanted to be a coach, a basketball coach. I did basketball for a while, but I had to teach in order to be a basketball coach at the time.
Mm.
And I was never good at school. Well, there you go. I was, and I've never said this to too many people. So I think out of my class of 68 people, I was 67.
Oh, nice. I will do my
And
very best to not make fun of you for that.
yeah, yeah. And I can pretty much say that I'm probably, well, I mean, obviously I'll pat myself on the back, but I would say I'm in the top 5 now when it
Yeah,
comes down to, income or whatever, money wise.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
so I came out. So then I completely switched gears. Obviously I had to have some money. So I ended up working for a furniture company, in the warehouse, and I ended up, doing well there. And then I end up getting to a point where I was a salesman on the floor. And, of course, once again, guess what happens? The economy takes a crap, and
Mm,
I'm laid off. So
yep.
here I am. So now it's like, all right, what else you got for me?
Yeah,
And I say, well, okay, now I can focus on school.
sure.
So I got my schooling, I got my degree. That's where I actually, the story is, and I'll make it quick. Met my wife at Cal State Fullerton. She was getting her master's. I was still I was slow going to school. There you go. There's your 67th.
Yep.
And we actually, I actually, what I say is that I married my professor, because she was actually my teacher when
Nice.
when I was there at Cal State. I took a weightlifting class and she was teaching it. But
Nice. Yeah.
nothing came out of it. I got an
No,
A in the class.
nothing untoward.
Um, no. And
No.
of course, I found out everybody got an A in the class that semester. But anyways, I was coaching at Cal State Fullerton for basketball,
Mm,
and I might see her once in a while. And I came out of class one day, and she's like, "Hey, Kent, come over here." Gave me her number, and that was April. We went on our first date April 25th, 2000, and we married August 6th, 2000. So we pretty much knew, and we were never apart. And now we're going on our 24th year. So
When you know, you
yeah,
know.
yep, yeah, oh yeah, yep.
That's
Before that, I said to myself, I'm never getting married. So thank God I didn't fail at that.
was that also a parents, like a family thing, or was it just you wanted your freedom to be a bachelor?
I think, yeah, at the time I liked it. I was enjoying it.
Mm,
And so, but I mean, why I said that, I have no idea, because I didn't know what married life was like. I mean, how could I even say that?
right, right.
So, I mean, no, my mom and dad had a great relationship, still do. And so, no, yeah, I don't know. Who knows? So well, that goes back to, I know everything. So apparently I must have known
Mm,
that being married is not a good thing. I don't know.
right, yeah.
So
It's just that's just the way it is. This is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So then I got my teaching degree, ended up being a special ed teacher. I was a coach, same time. Um, Stopped being a special ed teacher in 10 years. Actually stopped teaching. Went back into construction, because in the meantime, that whole time, my wife and I had flipped 2 or 3 houses and made
Mm,
a good amount of money in that area. So we did that, and I thought, I could do this again. I'm ready. For some reason, I still hadn't had that mindset yet. I still hadn't read that purple book yet, understanding
ah,
what I was doing, which I didn't even know I was doing. It was a good thing.
right.
So one of the district people called me up, knew I was back in California, and asked, "Hey, would you be interested in teaching a construction class?" And I'm like, "Oh, that'd be awesome." So I created a curriculum, worked full time, did that for 15 years, and we were top notch in Southern California. We actually had contests we'd win. We were state
Wow.
champions. We went to nationals, and then this is all in the book. So we end up being. I got to a point where once again, I got to a point where I've conquered what I wanted to do. I want to do something else,
Mm.
and there were some other things that came across that's in the book. But then I read the Purple Book,
And what
Rich
is the
Dad Poor
purple book,
Dad,
Kent?
Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
and as I say on all the podcasts that I've been doing, if you haven't read it, you need to read it.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. You go get it right now and you read it.
Yeah,
So,
it's
um,
I cannot think of another book that's been more influential in creating entrepreneurs than that. Maybe there's a few, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just not well read enough to know them.
well, my book, of course.
Well, yes, true. But
So,
that has the Purple Book has a few years on
yes,
yours.
yes, that is true. So, but I read that when I was 49. My
Mhm.
brother and I were sitting on a beach, and he said, "Hey, have you read this book yet?" And I'm like, "No." He says, "You need to read it." And this was my youngest brother, and I came home, read it, and that was my mind shift.
Wow.
I started. This was at 49, and at 55, I retired from my W-2. So don't tell me that you can't do it in less than 5 years, because you can. You just have to have that mindset. You might fail at some other things, and I did. I failed at a lot of things, but you also succeed too.
I also want to speak to people specifically who like, and it's always, people that like, you're going to find excuses if you don't want to do things. That's just facts. I've done that. A lot of other people do it, but it's the flip side of like, oh, well, I'm too young. I can't get into this. On the other side of that, people go like, I'm too old. I'm 40, 45, 50. Like, how am I going to get into how am I going to start investing in real estate? How am I going to start building more freedom for myself and my future? And just listen to this guy. I mean, seriously, he he had so many different non-freedom expanding jobs, some of which he really loved, it sounded like, but
Yeah, yeah.
it took until 49 years old for that mindset shift to happen. And it's not, I really don't think it's worth a value judgment one way or another what age that happens for you at. The important thing is that the shift happens and that you jumped on it and you didn't use, oh, well, I'm in my late 40s as an excuse.
And that's, I was at that point.
Yeah.
But I think over the years, though, because of my failures before, and I did have success between each one of those, that was what really kept me going. I mean, I don't know if you're someone that continues to fail and fail and fail, and what that does to the mind.
Right.
But I mean, you still have. I mean, then you got to find the little things that were successful with. I mean, you don't have to make billions of dollars and be successful.
Right.
I mean, if you wake up in the morning, that's a success.
Yeah.
Right. If you're able to get out of bed and walk, that's a success.
Yeah.
If you can
100%.
yourself, that's a success.
Yes.
So it's the small things that I think people forget about that they do every day, and that they understand that there's so much. You are so successful that you forget about, because you think it's a habit, but that habit is happening because you were successful.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I mean that's that goes into where does growth and further success come from? And I think there are a lot of people who are on a path to burning out where it comes from mostly negativity. Now, I'm a pretty negative person. I have a pessimistic show called Bad Deals where I only want to talk about people's failures. But I truly believe that future success comes from saying, this is where I am now. This is what I did to get me here. This is where God has put me. This is what he's put in front of me. And yeah, I'm going to fail. Yeah, I have failed, but it's really about moving forward, have the kind of gratitude that you're talking about.
That's it right there. I mean,
yeah.
Stop being selfish.
Yeah. That's the takeaway, folks. Stop being selfish. I mean, kind of.
Yeah. Yep.
So, do you feel like that needing to do everything yourself? We're coming to the point where you have the mindset shift and you retired. When do you think that really started to take hold for overcoming the hurdle of Kent needs to do everything himself. Kent needs to know everything about everything.
It was the mindset that when I was in my classroom and some bad news was given to me from the district, and I'm like, everything I have done, really? You want to do this? And I was sitting there and I was like, man, I was starting to not be able to catch my breath. And, I was kind of heating up, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? I mean, I'm a pretty healthy guy at that time. I definitely had some weight issues. But it's like, what's going on? Am I having a heart attack? And I'm just like, I am not having a heart attack in front of my students. And that's all there is to it. So I just kind of I walked outside and just sat down, and I just like, what am I doing? This is not me. I don't do, wow. This is not me. Why am I stressing over things like this? I need to change. And
wow.
And then, that was the point where the book came into effect. And then I started reading more books. What's the one Miracle Morning? That was a really good book. And then the other one was, what is it? Make My Bed, or Making My Bed. I can't remember. Man, that's a really, do I have it? I don't have it here. But that's a really good one. So I just started reading, and I never read, because when I read in high school or middle school, whatever, of course it was always a story, and it had like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters in it. Mm-hmm. Well, my brain doesn't work that way. I can't keep track of those. So I have to go back and, okay, what did this person? I mean, I have a hard time watching a movie because it changes so much.
Yeah. Yep.
But you give me a manual or directions, boom, done.
Right.
I can handle that. And these books, these self-help books and how to do things were perfect. So I just kept feeding my brain, podcasts, because I had an hour commute from where I worked every day. So I just throw on a podcast and listen to it.
Right.
And that was a big shift. Getting health. I mean, figuring out the time. Oh my, that's the other book. One thing.
One thing.
The one thing.
I'll have to read that.
And that's by he's the real estate person. I'll think of the name.
Man, I'm acting like I don't have a browser right in front of me that I can just look stuff up on.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the one thing. Yeah,
The One Thing by Gary W. Keller.
Well, who's Gary Keller?
Wait, who is Gary Keller?
Keller and the real estate model.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah,
Keller Williams.
So reading that book by just doing one thing at a time, because my mind is squirrel. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So by understanding that was very helpful. I thought it was just me that thought like that, but there's so many people out. Obviously, there's more people out there than just me that think that way. So it was a big time figuring out the time. That was one. My health. My wife and I, and our kids, we got connected to a holistic doctor, which was still is fantastic, and we're very healthy. We budget a certain amount of money each year that goes to that, so we spend a good amount of money on our health to make sure we're healthy, because we want to live. We want to live a long time.
Sure.
And then that's what. And then having that time. Having your health, and then that's what's going to create your wealth. And I did that in 5 years.
Wow.
I was able to, and I lost like 40. I lost like 40 pounds during that time.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's just
that's truly. I mean, that's a turning point moment in your life. And I want to talk a little bit about what, even with this turning point, what the consequences were besides, maybe having a heart attack or a heart attack scare, after we go to a quick commercial break.
Oh, hello there. I didn't see you. I was just enjoying a nice Earl Grey. You might think there's whiskey in that glass, but not everything in our world is as it seems. For instance, real estate gurus would have you believe that the best way to protect and grow your wealth through real estate is to get out there, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and start buying houses. Preferably from them. Sure, that could work fine for some people. But if you're a high earner, chances are there are things you want to do with your time outside of work. Things like playing golf, having romantic dinners with your spouse, playing with your children, exercising, and cracking open a cold one with the boys. And the fact is, you can get the benefits of real estate investing without having to deal with tenants, toilets, or bad deals. The key, though, is mitigating your risk by doing it the right way. I want to show you the right way, and that's why I just wrote a book, The Minimalist Guide to Multifamily Investing. I could sell this on Amazon. Actually, I am selling this on Amazon. But I think it'd be more fun to just give it to you for free. And you can get it for free today by going to minimalistmultifamilybook.com. That's minimalistmultifamilybook.com. Quit drinking the fake stuff sold to you by the gurus and reach for the real stuff. Cheers.
And we are back. So, Kent, I want to talk a little bit about and we kind of went into this somewhat, but what were the consequences of living for so long with I have to do everything myself mindset?
And that's a great question. When I look back over the years, and knowing I had to do everything myself, which was a lot of time, it definitely took me away from my family. And I mean, I was still there for them.
Sure.
But I would, I would leave at, 6 in the morning. I'd get home at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I'd be exhausted.
Yeah.
And then you still got to come up with that energy to hang out with the kids, because they don't know any better. So, I obviously we had a crystal ball, and I go back in time. People ask me that, and I just like it would be the same thing. I would still do because I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
So, but I will. But like I think we talked about this off air. Younger people, please read Rich Dad Poor Dad and read my book because it's just something that's going to help you understand what you need to be doing, especially if you come from a family that doesn't have money. And I'm not saying. I don't have a bad story. My family was great. We might not have went on a ton of vacations, but there was food on the table every night, and we were fine. We had clothes. So that's not my story. But there's plenty of people that are just like that don't think that they can be wealthy in the future just because of that. So knowing everything. One story comes to mind. I'll take this from my book. Was that we flipped a house. We bought another place. We bought in a really nice area. It was, of course, we always bought the ugliest house on the street. And at the time, this was before I even read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Had no idea this was actually called the Burr method or flipping houses. I just thought this is what you did to create that cash and move up to the next one.
Right.
I knew everything, right?
Yeah.
So I'm out there and it's a really nice neighborhood, and I'm mowing my yard, and I take care of at the time I was like making sure mine was the nicest yard on the street, the cul-de-sac, and everyone else has gardeners that are doing their yard. And the neighbor comes out and he goes, like, "Hey, Kent, why don't you have someone do your yard?" What? I would never do something like that. Why would I want to do that? I can do it myself. Well, it took me 4 or 5 hours to do this. After reading the one thing, it's like, so then you got to start. So, okay, even if I do it 4 or 5 hours a day, how much money is that costing me when I could be doing something else? So now I hire a gardener. He costs me $120 a month, and I have 5 hours free to hang out with my kids.
Yeah.
And throw the ball or go swimming or something like that I didn't even think of, and it was a no-brainer. And that's with a lot of things, and that's part of the book is understanding your time. Is it worth it?
Man, that's wow. Like I've been rereading 10X is Better Than 2X, which we're just throwing out tons of book recommendations this episode. You know what I'll do is I'll compile all of them and I'll just put them in the show notes so that you can read all of these books. But Kent's will be on top. But the other ones will be there as well. I was rereading 10X is Better Than 2X, and he talks about the difference between wanting and needing something. And I can't tell you how often in my life I've done things because I felt like I needed to do, or it might even be like a subconscious need. In your case, like you probably didn't think, well, I need to be the guy who does the mows the lawn and does all the stuff. Maybe it was conscious. I don't know. I'm not you. But it's such a habit. Talk about habits. It's such a thought pattern. And I'm guessing that, did you get a gardener? When did you get a gardener in relation to when you read the Purple Book? Or had the hard experience?
It was probably 6 months after.
Yeah.
And it was, and I know it was after I read the one, because I'm pretty sure I read the Purple Book, and then I read the one thing, and then the bed. I can't remember that one, but yeah, it was right, because I sat down and figured out the time. It was just, are you kidding me? Even I'm throwing all my stuff out of my book, but even with me teaching, at a point, because of all the extra hours I would put in, I was making $16 an hour. Really? At 49 years old, I'm making $16 an hour? No.
Living in Southern California, 49 years old, making $16 an hour. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So that's what it works out to. Teachers don't get me wrong, teachers in California make good money. They really do. But when you start adding all the, and we put in a lot of extra hours. So
yeah. My wife she's a private teacher. She's a private music teacher, and she spent a little bit of time in the public school system. Now, pay is not as good in Metro Nashville public schools as it is in probably most of California. But just that was what I asked her, because this was around the time I was going through my own mindset shift, right? You know, if you listen to my episode with Gino on the Movers and Shakers podcast, shameless plug for that, I talk about coming to a decision point in my life. This was actually around the time when she was teaching, and I was like, so how many hours are you probably working, you know, per week as this teacher? She was like, probably 35. And I was like, okay, how much are they paying you for? She said 20. I was like, yeah, so you think they're going to change that? And she's like, no. And so I think ultimately she left because, you know, she felt like she still had a passion for teaching, but she did the same thing you did, where she was working out, like, how much is my time worth here? What else could I be doing that increases the freedom that I have and that my family is going to have? Like, that was her mindset too.
Now, you know, you can easily, because this is what my wife actually, I'll put a plug in for her. What she coaches is she helps teachers love their job again.
Wow.
And how she does that is she just lets them know you don't need to be doing all this stuff after school. You're only getting paid, but you know, it's that generational tradition that when teachers get into the teaching gig, they know they're working for free. No, they don't. Or they wouldn't be in it.
No, yeah. If that's the first thing you heard on the first day of your Ed 101 class, like, get ready to work for free. Like, how many people you think would drop the class?
Yes. Well, even if it's in your contract, first thing, you are working for free.
Oh, yeah. Right. Wow.
So yeah, it's that generational tradition, man. I just love those two words, man.
Yeah. Does she have a business we can plug too? I don't know if she's taking on new coaching clients. If not, we can just cut this part out of the show.
Yeah, no, we can. It's the Rebel Coach, the Rebel Coach.
The Rebel Coach. Okay, I'll get a link from Kent to that, so we can put it in the show notes too. But hey, man, that's honestly so much value in here. I love. This is a little bit, by the way, folks. It's a little bit away from normally the type of episode we do here. If this is your first time, this is your first episode, welcome. Mostly we talk about, hey, this is me and I lost $1 million. Like, this is today we're talking about more of a mindset, more of a, you know, I lost $1 million worth of time and opportunity, you know. And this is just, man, this is so good. I think this is going to be really, really important for a lot of people listening to this. So, man, thank you so much. Just to sum up, so Kent he grows up with the mindset of, I'm going to do things myself. He's driving a cement or a concrete truck at 16, like a maniac in Ohio. He basically all but runs the family business until that has to get sold. Then he goes through just so many, honestly, like, learns so many different skills, is in so many different trades and jobs, until one day everything just catches up with him and he realizes, like, I've just had the wrong mindset. And what led him to that point was being around, well, having a brother that would recommend some really good reading, and then taking that to heart and really applying it. Man, that's such a good story. I love that so much. And I'm very happy to be able to tell your story here on the podcast. Now, we're kind of running up against time, so I do want to ask, is there anything that you can offer to listeners in terms of resources, and or how can people get a hold of you?
Wow. Resources obviously is Kent Kiess. And then my email is kent@kc-investments.com. Give me a call, 562-209-3159. I have no problem talking to people. Take anything you want out of your gut, and I'll listen to it, man. I love it. I love to help. And, of course, I got this bad boy right here. So
Beyond the
Blair's
Tool
kind of.
Belt. That's
Yes.
that's a cool looking book. Has that won any like accolades or honors?
Well, it's a bestseller so far.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that it keeps going and it keeps growing. And I wrote that book to just what we just did, share my story, because I know there's thousands of others out there that will be or are going through the same thing. And you and I both know this is what we want to do. We want to help others get to that point and just give them the ideas. They might not follow through with it, but at least let them have some hope that there's failure out there for everything. Just you got to be strong. You got to be in that mindset. And Jay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And folks, thank you for tuning in, listening to a very kind of a special episode of the Bad Deals podcast. We will see you next time.
On the next episode of Bad Deals.
How much did the GP team lose?
Yeah, they lost like nearly 300 grand. Yeah, it was a lot of money. Since the market was just going so crazy, in order to stay competitive, especially in Texas, earnest money deposit had to go hard day one. Not refundable. So at that time, it was normal. Now, maybe not, but a lot of people do.
If you like the show you just heard, you can actually help us out a lot by following, subscribing, and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app.